you playing?
Hello, and welcome to What the Bleep Are You Playing? A podcast where we sit down and play a game, most of the time bad, and then tell you why the bleep we played it. I'm Speedin' Sean, I'm here with Racer Thomas, and this is Mason, who is still looking for another shortcut.
I'll find it one day. One day I will find it.
So, we are playing Hydro Thunder.
Actually, I believe you mean to say we're playing...
Oh, Thunder!
Ah, damn it, I didn't play it the right
Yeah,
way. You know what,
it's
it's
fine.
fine.
Hydro Thunder!
There you go.
Hydro Thunder.
One of my favorite parts of
Look,
this game
the
is
announcer
just
is
that
definitely
opening
was on
announcer.
cocaine when he was recording that. When he was recording that, he snorts one and then just goes off.
It's a late 90s arcade game. They're all on fucking
That
coke,
an-
brother.
that
It's a late 90s Midway arcade game.
Okay, so yeah, it's definitely on coke.
That announcer's up there with the Smash Bros. Announcer as one of the best in video games.
Unless he pronounces Ganondorf.
Ganondorf.
I think he's just scared of Ganondorf, so...
No, I like to think he's bored. Like, he's just like, oh, this fucking guy.
This guy.
this guy again.
Because that's
Yeah.
what Link, and that's, this guy again, says Link.
It's been Link all along. That's Link's voice.
Oh, God.
Anyways,
that
Hydro
is a twist. Anyway, Hydro Thunder for the PlayStation 1 is what we played it.
Unfortunately,
without a Dreamcast to play it, we could not play the best version of it.
You know, thinking about it with how not far we got through actually unlocking stages, I should have just bought Midway class. What is it called?
Midway Arcade Treasures.
Midway Arcade Treasures 3 has like an upgraded, ported version of it. That's the one we actually should have played. That's
the one I was gonna buy.
I know,
and then
I
you were
told
like,
you
no, the PS1 has more content, which it does.
it does.
To
We
be
just
fair.
we just didn't get
we
to
just
it.
we just didn't fucking get to any of it.
So in the the 90s, arcades still existed.
They
and
did.
we're still doing things, and so Midway was like, what if we make an arcade game and then port it to all consoles?
Yeah, it was ported
Yeah.
to N64, PS1, Dreamcast.
It was the first one was the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast was literally it came arcade, and then let me look at the date. It wasn't that long. It was 4 months later, 5 months later, 6 months later that it was on the Dreamcast. And then it was it was not till the next year that it was ported to the 64 PlayStation, and then a year later it was ported to Windows.
Okay.
That's really interesting. So the arcade version, this was my choice. This was my game, and the arcade version was the one that I played first, and it was back in the day, we used to have here where we live a restaurant called Cece's Pizza.
Mm-hmm.
That had an arcade in it, and I remember sometimes when we would all get our families together, we would go to this Cece's Pizza, and they have an arcade in the back area, and they had a Hydro Thunder machine, and that was one of my earliest interactions with an arcade game. And then when we got our PS2 at home, my dad surprised me with the console version, so I got to play it all the time.
Honestly, the Hydro Thunder throttle probably tasted better than Cece's Pizza.
Hey, I liked Cece's. I haven't been there in a while,
I'm
but
sorry.
That's unfortunately what your child brain still telling you things like, yes, the food at Chuck E. Cheese was good.
I don't think I ever had the food at Chuck E. Cheese. I've been to Chuck E. Cheese multiple
Good.
times. I don't think I've ever had the food there.
You didn't get to taste the melted plastic that they called cheese.
Surprise, this is actually a podcast rating all bad pizza places. I know.
Chuck E. Cheese is mid-tier, if we're being honest.
I mean, at least it's not Little Caesars.
I would take Little
I'll
Caesars
take
over
Little
any
Caesars.
of those options,
Nah.
but this is a weird start to this podcast on it, but
Hydro Thunder, made for the arcade. I want to say I played it in the arcade.
I'm sure I have. Like, sitting down and playing, I'm sure I've sat down at one point in my time, because I did a lot of arcading in the late 90s.
One of my favorite things about the arcade machine, I just remembered this, is that like before you actually like put the coins in and stuff, they had that like the little sizzle reel thing of the game at the beginning, and I remember part of that sizzle reel was like a developer's credits list, and one of the screens it just had like all the developers faces like on these cartoon characters that were in like giant inflatable inner tubes in the water, and it just slow panned over all of them. I just now remembered that. It's very funny.
Midway usually like had a sense of humor with their developing stuff. So.
I mean, this was a part of the Thunder series that Midway had that also included
That's right, 'cause
Off-Road
Thunder
Thunder,
was another
Wheel
one.
Thunder, and Arctic Thunder.
I never played any of the other ones, but I remember Off-Road Thunder as well, because that was also part of the Midway Treasures collection. That one was really fun
Arctic
as well.
Thunder sounds badass. I ain't even gonna lie.
I'm gonna guess Arctic. Yeah, you're on jet skis, and if the box art is to be believed, you have missiles.
Oh shit!
So it's like a battle game.
Potentially.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot more going on in later Thunder games. For example, the Off-Road Thunder, that one had power-ups, like Mario Kart style power-ups that you could use.
Which to be fair, I kind of appreciate Hydro Thunder's simplicity because sure there are times where you want Mario Kart, where you want Sonic Sega All Stars Racing, where you have the power-ups and you launch
where you
the
want to
missiles.
destroy the person in front of you.
Yeah, but sometimes you just want to have a good old-fashioned race.
That
Yeah.
is my initial feeling while playing this game. There's a lot, we did not get very far into it. It's not an easy game to unlock things quickly.
It is not.
It's got
It
a lot
is
of it. But they don't make games like this anymore.
Oh no.
And I know even just not for like going to the arcade, but sitting at home, they don't make games that are just sit down and race your friends. No gimmicks, no nothing. You're just sitting down and racing them and trying to beat them. This is at the time when a lot of snowboarding and skateboarding games were coming out a lot more with racing abilities. Mario Kart had not taken over the racing scene. Gran Turismo was probably the most popular.
I was about to say Gran Turismo.
I mean, Mario
would have
Kart
been out by
64
this
existed,
point.
so obviously Mario Kart was still
Oh,
big.
It was still popular,
But-
but if you thought racing back in the 90s, you thought Gran Turismo.
And arcade racing and things like that. A lot of the arcade games.
Like Cruisin' USA.
I'm pretty sure to this day the original Gran Turismo is the highest selling game on the original PlayStation.
Wouldn't surprise me.
I think. Don't quote me on that, but I'm fairly certain.
It's up there. It's one of the
Yeah,
big ones.
it's
That's
up there.
why every new system they have to bring out a new Gran Turismo, and the internet then goes, "Who is this for?" And then it's a huge selling game.
Yeah, it's for Gran Turismo fans, obviously.
Yeah, who are quiet, but damn, are they passionate.
And
I
they
mean,
pay
yeah.
with their wallets.
Yeah, exactly. They talk with their wallets.
I think if I had grown up around PlayStation more later on in my life, I would love the Gran Turismo series. But I became an Xbox kid in middle school, so I ended up with Forza.
I played a little bit of Gran Turismo back in the day because it was on the demo disc that came with my PlayStation. So I played a lot of the first one, and then I played a little bit of 3 when it came out.
And we did.
But Gran Turismo, the thing is, as racing moved to more and more crazy, Mario Kart, Burnout, things of that nature, where you had your kart racers that were more party games, and if you were going to have a racer, you had like Need for Speed or Burnout or one of those sort of things that were more towards shorter drag type racing, things like that. Gran Turismo being just a straightforward like driving simulator. I mean, it's fast, like
Yeah.
you're going hundreds of miles an hour, but you don't feel the speed that you do in the other games, and it felt slow.
I was gonna say because technically, like you're probably going slower in Burnout, in all honesty, but you feel the speed in those games.
I remember one of my, because I think we had like the first the first 4 actually. Sorry, Gran Turismo games. I played Gran Turismo 4 the most out of all of them when we had our PS2 when I was younger. And I remember one of my biggest issues with that game is that racing games as they went forward, you know how like when you're looking behind the car and when it turns, you can kind of see the car turning and the camera doesn't immediately follow as much. In Gran Turismo 4, that camera is stuck right behind you, and it
You're
is
supposed to feel like the driver.
it is very disorienting.
Yeah.
That's why most Gran Turismo gameplay you'll see is in the first person's perspective.
Because it's meant to feel like the driver, which this game you don't necessarily always feel like the driver. To
You
get back to
don't.
Hydro Thunder,
No.
it's
You
very
don't,
arcade. It does have first person mode, which I found to be the easiest of the 3 modes, or not necessarily mode, but camera angles that you could switch
Yeah.
between. I actually found the chaos a little easier to handle with first person. I'm sure with my kid brain back in the 90s, I would have much preferred the outside of it, but
That's
this
what I
game is
prefer.
chaotic, and just right off the bat, the graphics, they're 90s graphics. They're 90s arcade graphics.
Well,
so
their 90s arcade graphics brought down to PS1 graphics.
exactly, and that's the thing is, we played it. I think I see that the PlayStation and the N64 had the same reviews, but a lot of me was like, I feel like I would have controller-wise preferred to play with the N64, and definitely the Dreamcast, which, because as good as the PlayStation controller is, and I love the PlayStation controller. I've been a PlayStation slut for all generations.
Even as they kept basically the same design for 4 generations.
Yes, I love the controller. I don't want to. I'm one when they announced the new PlayStation 3 controller when it was initially the Boomerang was like, no, don't don't fix what isn't broken. I'm one of the people who got mad, so they went back to what wasn't broken.
Well, thank God you saved us from that disaster.
Exactly, it was all me.
It was all.
But.
Thanks for halting innovation.
One
Sean.
thing that the PlayStation controller was not necessarily great at, racing games.
Hence why the only big car games even for the PlayStation was Gran Turismo, which is very simulator, very slow. Not slow in that you're going slow, but slow in
It
that
feels
like,
slower
you-
comparatively.
And then there's Twisted Metal, which is not a racing game; it's a car combat.
The Need for Speed titles also got their start on PlayStation.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
believe.
Again, but also very
I
different.
remember.
The way the controls that are set up in Need for Speed.
Yeah.
The thing about
and let's face it, Need for Speed did not get popular until Underground.
Yeah, that's fair.
and so I would have felt like holding a 64 controller or a Dreamcast controller, or sitting in an arcade or having a steering wheel hookup. All those would have made the game a lot easier to control some of these things.
Possibly.
But that doesn't mean it wasn't fun or that I didn't enjoy some of the things. There's just like, there's immediately some older graphic hiccups and the fact that we played on the PlayStation that immediately were like, oh yeah, this is why this game did not get the most kind reviews on this system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting game, though, and I think you could tell a lot of what Midway's philosophy was in the 90s and the 2000s of being edgier.
Yeah,
Everything is a
man.
little bit edgier,
Yeah.
One of the boats is named Damn,
Damn
the Torpedoes.
This was a game that I was allowed to play when I was like 6 or 7. And
Yeah.
And
I
it was,
could...
gosh, drat it, them torpedoes.
Yeah, I couldn't say the name of that boat, or else I got soap in my mouth.
Yeah, darn those torpedoes.
Those dang torpedoes.
But Midway was consistently that sort of like doing a little bit edgier, being okay with getting M ratings on games that maybe wouldn't have gotten M ratings throughout the time, because they obviously had the Mortal Kombat license.
Well,
That's right.
That's their big one. Like their big, you think edgy in the 90s. Mortal Kombat's the first one. But even then, they had shit like...
If you hear an alarm going in the background, it's because, once again, something's going off in the background.
Anyway.
Get good, you slut.
Anyway. But even with their non-fighting game stuff, like, again, their racing games, they always had these sneaky innuendos or swear words or whatever.
I mean, look at NFL Blitz.
Yeah.
Look
NFL
at,
Blitz.
MLB The Hits, MLB?
MLB The Hits. No, wait, was that NHL?
NHL was The Hits. MLB was like Sluggers.
show.
Sluggers, yes.
No,
No,
we're talking
that's
about
like-
Midway's.
They're over the
extreme,
top.
over the top.
Okay, yeah.
Well, because in those games, like especially NFL Blitz, you could fucking pile drive
Yep.
football players or
yeah.
like elbow drop them. Hockey's probably the same way. I haven't played the hockey ones.
The baseball one was amazing because you could throw at the batter and hit him, and after a couple of them, they'd get mad. Fire would come above them. They'd spin around, and then the camera would cut away as they charged the pitcher, and you just see like baseballs flying and things like that. And then your pitcher was suddenly injured.
Did Midway do the NBA games that were like
NBA
when you-
Jam or
where you made like if you made 3 baskets, the ball would catch on fire?
NBA Jam.
NBA Jam.
Was that Midway?
Yes.
Yes.
Nah.
I know because, spoilers, I recently went to a video game convention and I met the announcer of NBA Jam. Tim,
Oh, nice.
Tim Krovitz, I think is his name. Really funny guy.
Did you get him to say you're on fire?
He did it on his own.
So I imagine he goes and orders food and then says it.
And it says, "Oh, you're on fire!"
This
while he
food is
tips
on fire.
While he tips the pizza guy. He also has
He writes that on the receipt.
he also has a book about NBA Jam, which I did buy.
Oh, that's awesome.
And again, weird tangent. One of my favorite fun facts about the book is that Shaquille O'Neal loves NBA Jam.
Yeah.
Like it's his favorite game or whatever. So he would, because they didn't have console ports of it, he bought like a whole ass fucking arcade cabinet for NBA Jam and would just bring it everywhere he goes.
Oh, to have NBA money.
That's
no
awesome.
kidding.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, because Midway had that sort of edginess to them, and
That allowed them to stay afloat for a long time as bankruptcy was coming throughout the...
yeah, it was slow but sure, baby.
They had a bunch of successes, but also a lot of games that were trying to solely rely on edge.
Yeah.
And that kind of, a lot of stuff eventually kind of sunk them. But
Yeah.
this game is not the reason they were sunk.
No, this is a good game.
A couple of interesting things that are about this game is that it utilized the same basic cabinet on the arcade as Midway's earlier game Hyperdrive, and it had the same seat as Atari's San Francisco Rush. So they basically repurposed a couple of things to make this game. And then the steering wheel on the control panel was the same, though, as Cruising in the USA. So this game was a lot of pieces of things.
It was kind of a hodgepodge, but it was a hodgepodge that worked.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Not
there's
at
sort
all,
of a-
not at all. And
it's
that's not
kinda-
even a negative at all. On the 64, you could actually play 4-player. It was up to
damn.
4 players when you had the 64 expansion pack. So it was one of the games that used the little expansion pack.
I say oh damn, but the N64 did have 4 console controller ports, so that doesn't. Did it?
Yeah, it did. It had 4 ports
Yeah,
on the front.
64 had 4.
Or was that the GameCube?
Well, the GameCube did it too.
Yeah,
but
okay,
the-
but
Nintendo from the 64 on basically had 4 ports
Okay.
that you could plug into.
Okay. Well then, yeah, that doesn't surprise me then, because the most popular multiplayer game on the N64, GoldenEye, is famous for its 4-player multiplayer. So
And
it
it's
shouldn't
just,
surprise me.
that means they put some effort in porting it to try to change up some things and do some different things.
Yeah.
Uh,
Man, this game
some of
would
it
be
didn't
awesome
work.
with 4 players.
I think it would be really awesome. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of the thing that this game made me feel while playing it was like, as I said earlier, they just don't make games like this. They don't make games where you just sit down with your friends and just play a straightforward game over and over and over again.
well, they sure did try, at least with Hydro Thunder in like the 2010s. There was
Hydro Thunder.
Hydro Thunder Hurricane
Yeah.
was the sequel, and
Yeah.
I played the demo of it when I had a 360. It's okay, but a lot of it does kind of feel like a soulless recreation.
Yeah.
That just doesn't quite have the original magic.
Well, because the problem with bringing something back years and years later
Mm-hmm.
is you either need to perfectly recreate it or you need to add something.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I've seen, it's more of just like it's there recreation.
Well,
Yeah,
and
it's not like Mortal Kombat 9.
And it's also a different studio. It was obviously under it. Everybody who had basically Midway had gone under by that point.
Right.
Yeah, Midway was under. When did they go under? Was that
2000. I think I read 2006 or I believe.
Yeah,
is
I think
what
it was
read.
2006.
But also interesting, Midway before all of that had planned to create a double pack of Hydro Thunder and San Francisco Rush 2049, and they
Ooh,
were
I
going to
love
name it.
that
And they were
game.
going to name it Hydro Rush, and it was going to be for the PlayStation 2. But that game was canceled, and then all that project moved over to Midway Arcade Treasures.
There's a game that we should play. Rush 2049 is fantastic. At least from what I remember. It may not be as good as I remember, but I remember it being
So there were a
really
lot of
good.
ideas to continue this game or port this game in the future that kind of started going under, especially as the studio, as Midway had their
Yeah.
issues. Among the reviews, the arcade was the most. It had the fewest reviews because arcades just didn't have as many places to review them.
No.
But where it was reviewed very, very well. And then the Dreamcast got great reviews across the board.
Well, the Dreamcast was really good at doing water, I think, if I remember.
Well, because the Dreamcast was also just. I think we brought this up like 100 times before. Dreamcast was perfect with arcade games. Like maybe not pitch perfect, but it was damn close.
And they could port things really well. And also at the time, considering it was ported over to 64 and PlayStation, the Dreamcast was the better graphic of those ones as well.
Yes.
So some of it was less compressed on those sort of things. And then the PlayStation and the 64 got about the same reviews across the board, which were quite a bit lower than the Dreamcast had. So, for example, Game Rankings aggregate score had Dreamcast at 79%, N64 at 66%, and the PlayStation at 64%.
Damn.
So I did double check. Midway went under in June of 2010.
Okay, so it was later.
Okay.
It was later eventually.
Yeah, because I think MK Armageddon was 2007. Well, I don't know. All I remember was it was for the Wii.
Yikes.
There is also an element that was brought up in a review by Cam Shea, and this is something of Hyper. But this is while I was playing something that I would have felt as well. But he gave the review, the Dreamcast version. He gave 84% on his in January 2000, saying, after playing the arcade version, it has to be said that Hydro Thunder is a very faithful port. Graphically, this is a good thing, but in terms of replay value, the Dreamcast version suffers for its arcade heritage. And while playing that game, I kind of feel this. Yeah, if you're sitting down with friends and playing it, and maybe you're trying to unlock stuff on your own, maybe to play with friends, but if you're not racing against other people, I can't imagine this being a game I would have sat down and played a bunch.
Yeah,
It does kind of have that sort of you sit down,
Which is what
maybe
arcade
do
games were
one
made
or-
for.
yeah, you do
sit
one
down,
or
you
two
play with
races
friends.
and then you leave.
Yeah, you sit down, you put your quarters, you're racing your friends, and you
And then you
do
move
that.
on.
And that kind of has the feeling of it, that the replayability of this game, while I think I could have had a lot of fun in a group setting consistently, but how often are you always in that group setting? And this game
Yeah.
probably would have sat a lot for me because of that as other things came out.
Yeah.
And the problem with porting racing games, especially arcade racing games, is that, say, with, again, I'm a whore for fighting games. Take a fighting game. Even if you do a pitch perfect arcade port, and you will usually have the arcade mode, which has the character endings, so you have replay value to get that, to get lore. What is the lore of Hydro Thunder?
There are boats.
Yeah.
You race boats.
Yeah, and that's
That's
the thing.
exactly
Without
it.
any story, and not even without anything, it is truly just what would be deemed a party game. Which is, I think, why when they've repackaged it, it's been repackaged consistently with a lot of other stuff as a collection.
Because it's good as like it's good as like a bow, like it's a little bow on top of this really nice present. But as a solo thing, again, it's just like getting the bow with no presents. Like, cool, this is nice, but what the hell do I do with it?
Yeah. That's a good descriptor of it. Something that I just realized while we were talking is that Midway Arcade Treasures 3, which has Hydro Thunder on it, also has another game that I think we should play in the future called Stun Runner, which I remember playing a lot as a kid. That is really, really fun.
Well, because Midway Arcade Treasures 3 is basically just their...
It's all racing games.
it's just all the racing games, all the 3D racing games.
Yeah. And they are real. They're. I don't think there was a bad one on there.
Well, because Midway knocked it out of the damn park with racing games, with
And arcade games in
in
general,
general.
yeah.
Yeah, especially in the 90s, they just kept knocking it
Well, I
out.
mean, yeah. I mean, look, Midway is also a game we're going to play at some point, or a version of a game. They also did do Spy Hunter,
Oh
did,
wow!
yes.
which is a game we are planning to play.
Wait, is that the one with the Rock?
They
Or
did
There's
the
a
one
entire,
version of
before
it.
that.
they
yes,
did, they did
Spy-
the
yeah,
entire Spy Hunter series.
Spy Hunter series.
Oh,
So
wow.
So, yes, we will probably play the version with the Rock.
that's kind of the thing. There's also a version that came out on the GameCube way before the Rock version came out that is
Yeah.
really good. Spy Hunter in a lot of ways is, while not the same style as these games, but there's a lot of like, oh yeah, I can see where maybe one or two of the developers or people who worked on it also brought over it, but brought
which-
a story or at least a reason to keep playing it.
Yeah, which kind of makes me think that this should have taken some Spy Hunter or another game kind of like it, some Stuntman elements, where there are certain missions you have to do, like in
Yeah.
a race. Like, there could obviously be the one like get first place or whatever, but then there could be find all the shortcuts or collect all the items or boost like 24/7 or whatever.
Hydro Thunder Hurricane tried to do that. Didn't do it well.
Okay,
But at least
well-
tried.
Well, do it well.
Yeah.
They could have taken. I mentioned that a lot of like snowboarding and skateboarding games were out around the time, and kind of that would have been kind of the popular racing in a lot of ways. But I know a franchise that I played a lot of around this time would have been the Cool Borders franchise on the PlayStation. And again, you question some of the replayability on it, how much on it, but you were always trying to unlock stuff. There were new challenges, and there were different challenges, not just different tracks, but different things you could do. Snowboarding is going to have like half pipe and, slalom and, downhill and a bunch of other things. So that the sport just lends to it. But that's something that feels kind of missing in this, that the only thing is there's different tracks. That's the only thing, different tracks and some boats that are put into interesting categories that I wasn't completely sure what the difference of 100%, but...
I think some of them are just slightly faster.
Easy,
and they look
medium,
different.
hard, and bonus.
Like, maybe easier to control, possibly.
Probably.
One of my favorite bonus boats is that there's one that is literally just a scaled down version of the Titanic, and it's called Tiny Tanic, and it's so adorable. And one of my favorite things about it is every time you get a boost in any of the boats like slightly change a little bit so that the boosters come out and stuff. And when you get it with Tiny Tanic, the fourth smokestack folds down into a jet engine and it boosts you across.
And then when you crash with it, you hear people screaming.
Every time you crash,
Probably should not be playing the Arctic level then.
every time you crash, it splits in half, and you see someone bounce off of the propeller.
All right, well, dark.
And then Leonardo DiCaprio's in the ocean somehow.
But see, those are fun things in the game. That parts of those I understand, like unlockables in it, but also having some of those things from the start might gravitate because, or at least have a easy differentiation of the boats from the beginning.
Yeah.
At the very least, like more tracks than 3.
To
Because
start out
just
with,
having
yeah.
3 tracks to start out with is, I think, pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like,
And an easier way to know how to unlock them from the beginning.
Yeah,
'cause-
instead of like just getting first every time, because getting first in this game is very hard.
Because I think
Because
isn't it
it's
Gran
arcade
Turismo?
difficulty.
Isn't it Gran Turismo where you just are no matter what you get a certain amount of money in the race and you just use it to go buy stuff? I believe
that's how most racing games do.
And so like, hey, you finished third. Hey, you got $15. Go get some parts maybe and just.
A good example, I don't know if either of you guys have played this game. It's a PS3 racing game called Split Second.
Yeah,
I know of it, but I haven't played it.
I never had a
It's-
PS3, so
It's one of my favorite racing games. I love Split Second. But in that game, every time you finish a race, no matter what position you're in, I always got 4th or higher because I'm a cheap bitch and restarted. But no matter what you get points. And those points lead to unlocking bonus missions or unlocking other cars or unlocking other chapters in the story mode, stuff like that. And I think something like that would have done well here instead of the Ricky Bobby or if you ain't first, you're last.
yeah.
I said it's a fun game, but it's a game that you'll easily afterwards be like, I had fun doing that. On to something else.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think part of the
Time to boot up some Phantom Menace now for the PS1.
I think
No!
I think part of the reason that they did that sort of thing where you have to get first to unlock everything is part of that arcade transfer. Is that they wanted it to feel more arcadey.
Yep.
And I just feel like, why didn't they just give us everything at the start? I wish they would.
I think there's also an element of a lot of their arcade games or their arcade racing or sporting games. Think of NBA Jam, for example. Yeah, you're not going to be unlocking a whole lot of things, but you don't need to. The whole point is playing these players. I'm playing as Jordan and Pippen, or I'm playing as whoever whichever team.
Rodman and the other guy.
Yeah. You're playing whoever you got there to play as, and so you're trying to play as players you see on TV. There, you're not seeing that in a boat racing game.
Yeah. You're not going to be playing as famous boaters.
Who's the boat version of Danica Patrick? Water Patrick. What? It's the starfish from SpongeBob. Oh.
But that's kind of like the feeling after initial playing is just, oh, that was fun. It made me yearn a bit for the childhood like elements of it, but afterwards I'm like, yeah, I probably don't need to play this again.
And I mean, don't get me wrong. When I'm racing, I'm having a blast.
Yeah.
Like going over these volcanoes as they're erupting and collecting the boost, drifting around the corners through these caves. Well, drifting, whatever the hell it's called in the boat.
Boating through the waterfalls.
and things
Yeah,
crashing
that
into
always-
the walls.
That always blew my mind as a kid, being able to go through waterfalls and finding secret paths.
Yeah,
That was really
and basically
cool.
like splitting it like the fucking Red Sea Moses shut down. Like it's cool, but again, it's one of those things. It's kind of a one and done, especially because it's not very easy to unlock stuff.
Just you said that, and now I need a VeggieTales racing game. Anyway,
There's a guy on TikTok who modded Mario Kart 8
I've
and
seen-
put in all those.
I've seen that,
VeggieTales
but I need. You
Like
just said
an
partying
official-
like Moses, and I was like, when is VeggieTales racing going to be a thing? And/or when is my VeggieTales Smash Bros. Clone going to be a
Oh,
VeggieTales carts with a Z.
Veggie carts.
thing? Veggie cards.
Somehow Madam Blueberry has the highest stats in the game.
You're collecting like prayers. Is like instead of like shells, you're sending blessings to
Yeah.
people.
Hallowed be thy name.
Oh, that would be weird. Hey,
but it'd
didn't
be
you guys say?
hilarious.
Didn't you guys say that you guys had some pretty crazy things about the developers who ported the PS1?
I think Thomas had a little bit on this one.
Yeah,
because it was
so-
hard to track down. I did not get a whole lot out of
Oh
it.
yeah, that's
Because the problem with it is that the developers who ported this to the PS1, I mean, the arcade version we've said 700 times was done by Midway. Specifically Midway San Diego, who we've talked about earlier. They did the WWE All-Stars game we did
Oh
earlier.
no way.
Yep.
Really?
But it was ported to PS1 by a company named Blue Shift.
Yep.
And the fact that when I looked up Blue Shift, the first thing that came up was Half-Life Blue Shift on Steam probably says a lot. But I found their LinkedIn page, because they have one apparently, and they aren't credited for all these games on like Wikipedia or whatever, or even some other gaming sites.
Do you think they're lying?
Either they're lying or they did very minor work and they're still claiming credit for it, which, to be fair, is what you do on a LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But some of the games they've worked on, Spider-Man 3,
Oh Jesus.
Superman Returns,
Oh Jesus.
Lord of the Rings, Battle for Middle-earth,
Oh, that one I've heard is okay.
WWE Legends vs. Superstars, another WWE
Oh
game,
damn.
Mercenaries 2, World on Fire,
That's actually a pretty good game.
and
Never heard of
bringing it back full circle, baby, to our first episode, they worked on Marvel Nemesis.
No
Rise
way.
Of the Imperfects.
Oh no.
It's kind of interesting that we said Midway did the arcade, and Blue Shift did the PlayStation, and then Eurocom did all the others, the PC, the
Yeah, Eurocom
Dreamcast,
did
and the
the
64. And like that's just interesting that they didn't do the PlayStation, but they did the 64 and the Dreamcast.
Part of me wonders if because Midway was putting out so much at the time, they were like, just put it on someone.
Which,
Yeah,
by
yeah,
the
just
way,
someone do it.
Just Eurocom also had done a couple of very interesting things, like Mortal Kombat 4 for the PlayStation and the 64,
Oh.
and Duke Nukem 64. In the same year that they did Disney's Hercules.
Oh jeez.
So like,
jeez.
it's funny as we go through a lot of these, and we see a lot like
Zero
these
to-
studios that did a lot of the ports or worked on the ports that like obviously they put in a lot of work, but like it's interesting that in something before this podcast I didn't think about as much is like, oh yeah, like they're taking other people's code and stuff and they're porting it over and developing it for a system, but they're taking something that's already there, like,
Yeah.
and that's such a weird work that's like impressive actually sometimes, and also you're like, oh. Then you see the games that they did by themselves, and you're like, I see why you were porting.
Yeah, hence, again, look, one of the ones they are actually credited for, Blue Shift, is Spider-Man 3. So, ooh,
Yikes.
hey, you know what? They gave us great meme material.
I'm gonna
going
die.
to die.
Oh, it's my favorite.
But
That is crazy.
yeah, there just wasn't a whole lot on the developers because
They didn't do a whole lot.
they didn't do a whole lot. If your big early thing was porting Hydro Thunder,
I mean, they did other games before this, like, what the hell is it called? Toxic Run, something like that. It's an exclusive Xbox game. But Hydro Thunder was probably their biggest early thing.
But you can see, as the mentioned earlier, talking about the 64 having the 4-controller version. But the PlayStation, if you had the boomerang hookup, you could do 4 players. But you can see why it wasn't,
Yeah,
because it was a different studio that was porting it.
Yeah.
And
I
like-
completely forgot about the
and like-
boomerang hookup.
And like I said, Midway was probably, I don't want to say they were crunching, because who knows, maybe they were, maybe they weren't. but they were probably just like, get it the fuck out, just get it out, boot it out the door.
And again, the Dreamcast was the one. So
Get it
I
out.
wonder if that they saw the Dreamcast success, or they saw the arcade and knew they were going to want to port it, because it was almost 6 months later that the 64 and the PlayStation versions came out. But they're different studios at that time when they came out. So I wonder if it was like one studio take this, another studio take this.
Yeah, and maybe they thought the 64 version was going to be bigger because of the 4-player version. So
Possibly
that's why they-
also just that racing games had consistently done pretty well on the 64. There are a lot of racing games on that system.
And again, we bring it kind of full circle again for the PS1. It's mostly been Gran Turismo and stuff.
And PS1 had a lot of fighting games and platformers
Yeah.
as well. I mean,
I mean-
64 had a lot of platformers as well, but
Yeah. Well, 64 was more. I mean, PlayStation had 3D platformers as well, but when it comes to PlayStation, they had like Spyro and stuff.
It-
PlayStation was more, I guess, action game oriented.
yeah, and it also there might just be also an element of it was Sony getting into the game with the console
possibility.
with their first one versus 64 being or the Dreamcast being both Sega and Nintendo's third go around.
That's fair.
Or fourth
I mean,
go around Sega.
I mean, to be fair, like I don't. Cruisin' was on the N64. I don't think that had a PlayStation version.
That makes sense. So maybe there's a lot of maybe contracts. There's maybe other ideas. There's different things on why. But it's interesting that the two ports had those differences.
Yeah.
I just find that pretty interesting that they put it out to two different companies, which isn't uncommon. We've seen a lot of different studios doing different ports as we've done this podcast. So
Yeah.
I was just thinking, has there ever been any other boat racing video games?
yeah, there've been a bunch of
I
them.
mean,
They're just different
I
things.
was gonna say, do you count like games where you transform into boats? Because then there's like Diddy Kong Racing, there's Sonic Sega All Stars Racing Transform.
I mean,
yeah.
there's multiple jet ski racers. So Wave Runner is the one with
yeah, is it Wave?
Wave Race.
Wave Race.
Wave, the fucking Wave game on the 64.
Wave
Wave 64.
It's on.
No, not the waving simulator.
Jesus.
Tap A to wave.
So.
Wave
but
and
there-
don't
but
look
there-
like a dumbass.
But there haven't been a lot of like power
Oh,
boat
no.
racing games, I guess.
Not really. That was more of an arcade time thing. And as arcade games kind of became less and less and less, you'll still find games like that in the arcade, but they maybe don't get home console releases.
makes
I guess. Well, there's also the fact that like boats are cool, like they are.
They are.
The power boats are cool, but for me, it's just not as satisfying driving a boat as just hearing the wheels rev on the
Look,
ground.
Go
and
Vacation
just-
had jet ski races, so
It did. It.
and now you know why they don't make them anymore.
I was just trying to think. Was it was there powerboat racing in the Crew or the Crew 2? One of the two. Did that have-
Yes, I believe in the Crew 2 there was.
yeah.
Okay, so there you go. There's a
Yeah,
That's a pretty
but
big
that's
one.
another one with multiples.
that is, and I didn't. I was really big on it. I played a demo of the Crew 2. It's fine. But it's very empty. It's an
It is-
open world
it is-
racing game, and it is incredibly
It is
empty.
very empty. I do enjoy it, but that might also be because I got it for free with the PlayStation Plus.
You know,
thing.
sometimes
So-
you gotta enjoy your free stuff.
I did like how you could fly in a biplane though, but I didn't
Yeah.
like how you couldn't crash it. I wish you could crash planes in more games.
Well, anyway, either you had anything more about playing the game or anything?
I mean, not really. I mean, this is a lot of
This-
my choices for this podcast have just been me using it as an excuse to play old games from my childhood.
Yes.
And
This-
my excuses have been, let's play a bad game from my
Let's play
childhood.
Beatdown.
Let's play Beatdown, Fists of Vengeance, and
But I mean, I
Looney
think
Tunes. I like Looney Tunes Back in Action. I can't even finish that sentence.
I know. I like Phantom Menace.
I think this is the first one
yeah.
that I've picked that I genuinely feel like I've felt the same back then as I did playing it now. Other than Go Vacation, but that's a whole different.
Well, that's nostalgia blindness.
Yeah,
That's-
I will.
that's
I
the
will.
same-
You got
I
the beer
will-
goggles, though. I mean, the nostalgia goggles.
Yeah.
I will freely admit that I am nostalgia blinded on that one, but
I will say, I mean, this goes with any arcade racing game, but what the hell is this game called? Hydro Thunder. Hydro
it's only a
Thunder
game that we've
is-
been spending an
No,
hour
don't worry.
talking
It's
about.
just that forgetful sometimes. You know,
Oh,
boat racing.
No, it's more like I have the memory of a goldfish with Alzheimer's.
A goldfish that got hit by one of the boats in Hydro Thunder. But it got hit by damn the torpedoes. Or sorry, dang them torpedoes.
Darn those torpedoes.
Drat it.
It's one of my favorite games to watch speedrun.
Really?
I love watching speedruns of any arcade game, but Hydro Thunder is one.
I've never seen Hydro Thunder speedruns. I gotta
Oh,
look that up.
dude, they're just impressive as shit. Because
Speedrunning is art.
speedrunning is one of those things where I appreciate people who can do it, but damn, I will never be able to because I like to take my time with games. So
Yep.
look, could I speedrun Larry Boy the Bad Apple on the GBA in 39 minutes? Possibly, but I don't want to.
That's fair. That's fair. I used to not fully because I know now people who speedrun Pokemon Red at just and are like I can beat it in 10 minutes, and I'm like, oh, because you know all the cheats. But I used to try to beat Pokemon Red in 4 or 5 hours. I'd sit down and I'd 4 or 5 hours and then boot it up the next day and play it again and beat through it all there. Pokemon Stadium Dodrio Game Boy for the win.
Jesus.
I beat Marvel Nemesis in one sitting. Does that count?
I beat That's So Raven for the GBA in 1 2.5 hour stream. So
That's right. I remember that.
so yeah, take that one.
That's the badge I'll wear with pride. God damn it!
So on this podcast, we like to ask 2 major questions of every game. The first one being, how does this game hold up?
Better than I expected, to be honest.
Yeah, it holds up fine. As I said initially, graphically, the port, this version of the port isn't amazing. The controller on the PlayStation isn't great for the arcade.
Especially because this is early PS1. I'm pretty sure analog sticks were a thing by this point.
Oh yeah, they were. 96,
with
I think is when 96 or 97 is when the analog sticks.
Okay,
came
then
in.
yeah, it was a thing way before. But this kind of still feels like it's being controlled with the D-pad, if that makes any sense. That could be because it's, again, a port.
It holds up fine. If we're sitting down with a whole group and like, yeah, let's play some Hydro Thunder, especially if I had a 64, it had 4 players. Yeah, I'd play this game. But overall, it holds up fine. It's not like there's anything that's egregiously bad or that has gone through it.
There were like 1 or 2 glitches that we ran into, but that was mainly us being dumbasses.
I mean, look, I landed in the volcano and then went backwards. The screen blinked and suddenly I was in 4th place. So
That
look,
did happen.
It was pretty cool. I entered a portal.
You hit the shit from Thomas and the Magic Railroad where they just teleport through the buffers for some reason.
Where's the Thomas the Tank Engine racing game?
Why? Why haven't we got that?
Well, it's available in the UK only. It's called Hero of the Rails.
Wait,
All
that
right.
exists?
To the UK.
Well, look, it is partially real. At least that's the one gameplay I've seen of it, is you can do races in that game.
Hold on, what's the...
All the developers
hold on.
listening to us right now,
Hold
please,
on, hold
Thomas
on,
the Tank Engine
hold on.
Racing.
What is the point of a Thomas the Tank Engine racing game? You're all on rails. You literally can't do anything.
But you're all against, you're just trying to go faster.
All you can do is go faster or slower, which means one of you is always going to win.
Look, you can change tracks. You have to
cha-
get there in the time. You have to be faster to that.
You can change tracks. In the newer stuff, Thomas does go off rails and go through loop-de-loops and shit. It's stupid, but you can do it for a racing game,
Look,
I guess.
Yeah.
Just have Thomas in like a fucking Hot Wheels set.
I'm down. I want it.
I'll pay good money for this. I'll buy. You'll get three buys because I'll buy it 3
Developers,
times.
listening to the podcast that we know are definitely there and not in my mind. Please make it.
Please make it for those 2. I'm good.
No, for Mason, make the Ben 10 racing game and just HD remaster.
Oh, yeah, that's right. There was a racing game.
All right. Our second question that we like to ask for every game is, would this game deserve a reimagining or a remake in a modern setting?
I mean, it already kind of...
It did, and it had canceled sequels. It had a kind of a canceled, repackaging, as we mentioned. It had a bunch canceled. Then there was the sequel that came out for the Xbox. And so it's had a fair amount of ports and re-releases. I would love to see more of this style of game, arcade type of sit down with friends and race fun come back.
Yeah, I mean, there's like...
Even if it's not necessarily this game specific.
I mean, there's like indie games that are like that, but big AAA releases, the arcade sit down style is basically dead. So I would like to see this game... Not even necessarily a remaster. I'd take a port.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
like
look,
a port of the arcade game to modern consoles
with everything unlocked.
Switch got the 64 Pod Racer put on
Yeah,
it, and it's a very similar style of game in a lot of ways.
Yeah, so I would
you could easily get a port over to like a Switch.
You could,
It
like
could be-
the online
Yeah,
expansion.
with the online
I was
expansion.
gonna say Hell Switch Online has Wave Rider 64. Or
yeah.
whatever the hell it's
So
called.
yeah, it has that. So you could easily add it on,
and
it would be fun.
I mean, yeah, it's very similar to the game we did last week actually, where it's very much a one and done. Like you play it, you get what you want out of it, and that's it. But putting it online where you can play with other people online, play with friends online, and
blast.
some co-op, like local co-op.
Yeah,
I think
local
that'd
co-op
be
with the
great.
Switch. You have you have a group of people just on their own Switches sitting around in a room playing with each other. Like that would be fun.
Imagine if you could get like 6 players.
Yeah.
Get
or
6
something.
players,
And
if
you're
or if you could like customize the boats.
Yeah,
that would be
customize
cool.
the boats, like give them their own decals and whatever, like their own paint jobs.
Unlock some different things for like different boats. Like actually have some fun with it. There are options. This franchise.
Create your own boats out of blocks. Make Lego Racers 3 Water Edition.
That'd be really cool if they did the Cruising USA thing, where every time you win a race, you can add an upgrade to it. Like that was a Cruising USA thing, right?
I believe that was Cruising USA. Yes.
Yeah.
Or was that Cruising? No, I think it was Cruising USA. I think you're right.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
It would be cool. There are a lot of options that this adds a lot of kind of those midway games. The replayability at time for a lot of the arcade midway were great in the arcade, but not non-existent on the home console.
Yeah.
And like nowadays you could easily upgrade some of these and it'd be a lot of fun because I think at its core this is a really fun game. It just leaves a lot to be desired because of it is an arcade game truly through and through.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that, but like I said, it's very much a kind of a one and done. So I feel
It's
like
a very
it would
fun one and done.
Oh, it's a very fun one and done, but it is a one.
A one and done.
So I feel like again, porting it to the 64 online, having online co-op or local co-op with all the Switches, I think would be a really good idea. Unlock everything from the start, for the love of God.
Look, I could
all
even there. You can have the 64 controller that you can use on the Switch like that. There's so many. There are some possibilities there to make games
Yeah.
like this viable again.
So far, I think this is the easiest.
This is the easiest remake we've had. I think of anything.
It's like, just port it, for the love of God.
Yeah.
Like port it, and if it's successful, make more games like it.
Please, please. I
And
would play.
Let's Go Vacations.
I would play the hell out of another Hydro Thunder game in a heartbeat. Like Hurricane may have been a little bit disappointing, I will admit, but not gonna lie, as we've been talking about this, I've been thinking, can I play Hydro Thunder Hurricane on my Xbox One? I kind of want to see if I can, because I kind of want to play that again.
I think it's just on the Xbox.
I was gonna say, if it's on the Xbox 360, you should be.
I thought it was just
able
on the
to-
live.
It's an online only game.
Yeah,
I'm
so I
pretty sure.
assume you can.
Unless it got delisted.
I can figure that out later. But I'm
Mace is going to
definitely
be playing some Hydro Thunder.
Yes,
So
I am. Yes, I am.
So that's Hydro Thunder. Definitely not the worst game we played, and probably not the best either. But what do you guys think? You know, if you have some thoughts on Hydro Thunder, you know, go on over to that old iTunes or Apple Podcasts and, you know, type some words in there. Give us some reviews. Give us that 5 stars. Tell Thomas why he sucks. You know.
Do it with pride. Do it with your full chest, motherfuckers.
And 5 stars, whether you're over on Spotify or Stitcher or any of the other podcasting apps that we have this available on. Check it out, give a follow, and you know, we'll try to respond to those things.
What's your favorite boat in Hydro Thunder?
What is your favorite boat in Hydro Thunder?
And why is it damn the torpedoes?
The best of boats. Anyway, thank you all for listening, and you all have a wonderful rest of your day, night, whatever time it is, and we'll see you guys next time.
Get good, you slut.